Welcome to my second video in my series, How to Become a Kubestronaut in 30 Days. So in this series of videos, I'm talking about my experience of my journey to become a Kubestronaut in 30 days. I set this goal for myself for 2026, and I am not officially a Kubestronaut just yet, although I have passed all of the exams and I've fulfilled all the qualifications. I am still waiting on my onboarding email. So and to go through the onboarding process. And my understanding of the process is that they kind of do these once a week. So because I finished my last exam on Tuesday, I assume that I'm probably not going to hear anything until next week, which is fine. So anyway, I just wanted to make a quick video to talk about my experience specifically with the CKAD and what you can do to prepare, what you should be aware of, and just some general tips and tricks. So for me, I feel like it was very beneficial for me to take my CKAD right after my CKA. So if you look at my transcripts here, it was a little bit less than 2 weeks. And this is actually the completion date is when they issued the certification. So I actually took the CKA on December 4th and I took the CKAD on the 17th. So that being said, a little bit less than 2 weeks. I think I took one on a Thursday and I took the other one on like a Wednesday or something. But anyway, I would highly recommend if it's possible and if you can do it, I would plan to take these two back to back because the CKAD, if you can pass the CKA, and this is just my opinion, but if you can pass the CKA and feel confident, you're going to have no problem with the CKAD. And I think you honestly, you're set up really well for the CKS. So I have heard some people say that the CKS was like really super hard and that like the simulators weren't even close. And that was not my experience at all. I'll talk about that in another video. But my experience with the CKS was that it was actually very similar to the CKA. Anyway, back to the CKAD, Certified Kubernetes Application Developer. What do you need to know? What do you need to be proficient in? So obviously, Killer Coda is the go-to resource for training scenarios. You highly recommend it. You have to do these. You have to be proficient in these. I would, maybe get to the point where you can time yourself, or even come up with with some of your own scenarios. One thing that I tried, I wasn't crazy about it, but I did try to ask ChatGPT to maybe give me like some scenarios. Um, Boy, I did that specifically for the CKS actually, but it was somewhat helpful. But I found that the CKA and the CKAD scenarios on Killer Coda are just they're great. They're clutch. So I would definitely recommend going through every single one of these. Yes, there's a lot. I think they've actually changed this a little bit. I think there used to be more, or is that the CKA that they had more? Yeah. So I would highly recommend do all of these, especially the ones from Kim. Do all of these, and then also if you really want to be super confident, I would also do the CKA scenarios as well. Even if you're not planning on taking the CKA, it'll set you up for success for the CKAD. I can almost guarantee you that if you can do all of these scenarios with confidence, you will be in a good place to pass the CKAD. I would be very surprised if you failed it, if you've mastered all of these. So, which ones are important in my mind? The CKAD is more focused on deployments. Do you know how to monitor deployments? Do you know how to manage deployments? Do you know how to do rollouts? Do you know how to restart deployments? Do you know how to update images for deployments? Do you know how to roll back deployments and view the status and things like that? These are all going to be super important, right? So, and I actually like that they give you Vim set up here in all of these. Vim is going to be super helpful. I'll be honest, I've been a Nano guy for years and years because I'm like too lazy to learn Vim. It's terrible, I know. I actually, for the CKA, I realized that yeah, like Nano is not great for some of the things that you need to do. Like you're going to need to copy chunks of configuration from a manifest file in the documentation and paste it into an existing deployment. right? And with Nano, it's just going to be a little bit more complicated. If you can really master Vim, at least master like how do you, use the, multi-line selection and do indent or unindent. That's going to be huge. Even if you just learn how to do that and you just learn how to do like forward slash for searching for things, it's gonna be a huge help. So I'll be honest, I used them a little bit. I actually, in some scenarios, I switched back and forth between Vim and Nano on the exams, just because like I'm more comfortable with Nano. I'm more comfortable with doing things like cutting lines and uncutting lines in Nano than I am in Vim. So if it was a scenario or if it was a situation where I had to do something like that, I would reach for Nano. If I knew I was going to have to like deal with, getting YAML spacing just right, I would go with Vim because it's going to be a lot easier. So I like that they have this Vim setup here. Not much in here, but actually, if you go to Killer Coda, they do have a Vim. Where is it? I know they have it. I'm gonna have to search for it. I'm pretty sure I did this the other day. I thought that they had. There's somewhere in here where they have like some Vim scenarios and things that you can do. But I would definitely recommend having a good understanding of Vim. Oh, there it is. I've looked right past it. I was trying to search for it, but yeah. So definitely go ahead and do these scenarios. This is really going to help you too, right? Moving around, search and replace your Vim modes. This is gonna, walk you through how to set up for the exams. That's gonna be great. That's gonna be clutch. Back to the CKAD scenarios. I'm just going to touch on a few of these because I don't want to make a super long video. I want to like build upon these videos if there's interest in it. So understanding resource requests and limits on pods, how to set that on pods and deployments, that's going to be crucial to understand that. Config maps and also secrets and mounting those as volumes in pods or mounting them, referencing them as environment variables. You're going to have to want to know that. Readiness probes, absolutely. Building and running a container. This one for me was felt like a freebie because I build and run Docker containers every day. I've been working with Docker for many, many years. I am very well familiar with, I can write Docker files from scratch. I can write compose files from scratch mostly. I can work with Docker Swarm. So this one for me was a freebie, but it might not be for you. They're not going to expect you to know how to write a Docker file from scratch, but they are going to expect you to know how to like, how do you build a Docker file or how do you build an image from a Docker file? How do you tag that, apply tags to that image? How do you push it to a registry? How do you run that image? And they might expect you to know other tools like Podman or something similar. So again, you don't have to take a super deep dive, but you do need to understand like, how do I build a basic image? Can I identify errors, issues with an image? Can I build it? Can I tag it? Can I push it? Do you understand those things? And can I run it? Rollout, rolling, blue, green, canary. These are all very important. You really do need to understand, again, this is super deployment focused. So you really want to understand, doing rollouts and, restarts and doing, rollbacks. Custom resource definitions, be familiar with it for sure. I don't think I had any of these questions on my exam. I don't remember. Helm is actually one that threw me off a little bit. I am familiar with Helm. I can install Helm charts. I can write Helm charts. I can deploy them. But some of the things that they ask you to do were just kind of a little bit weird, or maybe I just didn't understand exactly what they were asking me to do. And I was overthinking them. For instance, they might ask you to, like update the version of a Helm chart or something like that. Just be familiar with it, understand what's going on. Ingress is a big one. So in the context of the CKAD, they're not going to expect you to necessarily write a network policy or edit it, but they might expect you to like implement a network policy. And what I mean by that is maybe you already have a network policy and maybe you already have like some deployments. And how do you get those deployments to use those network policies, right? So network policy is a big one. I actually skipped over it. I think I skipped over it on the CKA because I was just like, I don't want to deal with firewall rules. I don't want to learn all that. I don't want to think about it. And you're under a huge time crunch, right? So it's like, I didn't want to expend the brain power trying to understand it. After the CKA, I really took some time to better understand network policies and how to create them, how to test them. But in this context, you really just need to know, like, do you know how to use namespace selectors? Do you know how to use pod selectors? Do you know how to, if you're given a network policy that says this network policy is supposed to restrict traffic between namespaces, do you know how to implement that at the deployment level? Like, what is required to do that? So that's going to be a big one. And I would say network policy and ingress, these are both huge for the CK for all three of the exams. I would really say you're gonna have to know these concepts for all three exams, whether you plan to take them or not. And mission controllers, I don't remember if I had one of these or not on the CKAD. I know, I'm pretty sure I had a question like this on the CKS. They might ask you to do something like, given a partially implemented admission controller plugin, can you fully implement it? And can you test it and make sure that it's working, right? So you should be very familiar with admission controllers, what they do, understand how they work, how to get one set up and implemented. And API deprecations, I think I had a question about this. I don't remember if it was a simulator or if it was on the exam. But understanding, if you how to maybe move a resource from an older version of Kubernetes to a new version of Kubernetes. Typically, that's going to be things like maybe the YAML, the spec has changed a little bit. So understanding how to work with the spec. And then, yeah, so there's a lot more of these scenarios. Deleting pods, creating services is going to be big. Creating and running, basic pods, scaling deployments. All of these things are going to come up. Logging in Kubernetes. They might ask you about audit policies and logging, things like that. Cron jobs and cron jobs. This is actually one that I had probably the most trouble with. And this was a question on the exam that I did have a question on the exam related to jobs and cron jobs. And I'm familiar with cron jobs in the context of a Linux server. But some of the things that it was asking me to do, I wasn't quite sure about how to, it was worded a little weird. So I would say really know that, how to debug services, empty dir, create a pod with an empty dir. All of these are super important. I would say it's also going to be crucial that you understand how to troubleshoot and how to verify your solutions. So if they ask you to, set up an ingress, for example, do you know how to use curl to test it? If they're going to ask you to implement a network policy, do you know how to get the pod IP addresses and how to, shell into those containers running in those pods and actually check? Because they might ask you to do this across namespaces or something similar to that. So really getting that a good grasp of how to do that. There's no like shortcut to that. Some of that just comes with practical experience. So a couple like really practical tips that I would give you though, is on all of these exams, they're going to give you a scenario, or each task that they give you may have like 3 or 4 subtasks, right? Like they may say there's a deployment in this namespace, create a service for the backend pod, create a service for the front end pod, implement a network policy. So maybe you don't know how to implement the network policy, but you know how to create the pods and you know how to create the services. Do as much of that task as you possibly can, because the way that the tasks are graded, it's not a okay, you didn't fully get this question right, so you got a 0. Like you will get partial credit for a question or for a task, for the subtasks, I'm sorry. You will get partial credit for the subtasks. So when you come to something that maybe you don't know, maybe there's like one part of the main thing that they're asking you to do, you don't really understand. If you understand the other pieces of it, for example, there might be one where it's dealing with Helm and they're asking you something like, you know, maybe find what version of a Helm chart is installed, upgrade that version, and then maybe delete a release or something like that. Maybe you don't know how to upgrade the Helm chart, or you don't know how to find the version currently installed, but you know how to delete it. Just go ahead and delete it, and you'll at least get partial credit for that. Another one that I messed up on my CKAD was there was a question around that was based on deployments, and I don't remember exactly, and obviously I can't share the exact details, but they asked me to do something with modifying an existing deployment, but not deleting it. And I did not back that deployment up first. I didn't get the YAML and save the YAML. I just went in and edited the deployment, and I wasn't sure what to do. I kind of left it in kind of a half broken state. I'm not sure what happened, but when I came back later at the end of my exam, that deployment was gone. And so I know I got probably 0 points for that, but I still finished the rest of that task. There were a couple other things on that task. So I think that helped me and I think that saved me. So hopefully this has been helpful. And stay tuned for my next video. In the next video in the series, I'll be talking about the CKS and my experience with that, what I did, how I think it compares to all the other exams. So if you have any feedback, if you have any questions for me, feel free to leave them in the comments. I would love to hear from you. And don't forget to hit the like and subscribe button. And I will be making those next videos very, very soon.